Hi, I'm Dr. Marcia Sirota, and today I want to talk about how not to engage in confrontation. And in particular, I was watching season 2 of Bling Empire the other day. And Bling Empire is a really interesting show. It's a show about extremely wealthy Asian Americans and Asians living in Los Angeles. And it's a group of friends, and they get into a lot of conflicts with one another. And one of the particular characters really struck me as interesting because the way he was engaging in confrontation was not at all effective. In fact, it was very counterproductive. There were a couple of incidents in which somebody was trying to have a conversation with him about something that he had done that had upset them, and he dealt with it so poorly that I thought it would be an interesting thing to discuss. So the character's name is Kane. And I don't know how much of the way he was responding was scripted and how much of it was actually his own real response. It's very difficult in these quote unquote reality shows these days to know how much is real and how much is scripted. But let's say it was real. Let's say this person, Kane, really does respond to his friends trying to talk to him in this way. Well, he's going to be in a lot of difficulty because he cannot resolve issues this way. I'll give you a couple of examples. In the first, a woman named Dorothy was trying to tell him why she had been avoiding being his friend over the last few years. They had known each other several years ago, and she had decided that she didn't want to be his friend, and he kept trying to make overtures toward her. And finally, he gave up. But then a mutual friend brought them together so that Dorothy could finally tell him why she had been distancing herself from him. And she tried to discuss some of his behaviors that had been off-putting to her. And immediately he became defensive. He said, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to deal with this. Why can't we just put this in the past? I can't handle this. And he just didn't want to talk about it. He just shut her down, and he refused to even listen and to hear the things she said. He wouldn't respond to any of her actual statements. For example, she said that he was doing this competition with one of her other friends on Instagram and sort of trying to one-up this person, and then he blocked the person, and he didn't actually say anything in response to that. He didn't have any kind of comment about whether or not he did it or why he did it. He just basically refused to have any kind of conversation. And then she tried to talk about something else that he had done. And again, he never actually responded to any of her specific points. He just became defensive, and then he actually got up and walked away. And then the woman Dorothy, of course, turned to the mutual friend and said, you see, this is why I'm not his friend. I can't deal with this. In another situation, he had a very close friend named Kevin, and Kane had done something that had really upset Kevin. What Kane had done was Kevin had a crush on this girl, Kim, and Kane had told Kim that she shouldn't trust Kevin because Kevin was sleeping around, even though he liked Kim. And Kim, who already had trust issues, then her trust issues went through the roof. And when Kevin got wind that Kane had been telling Kim this, he felt very betrayed, and he tried to talk to Kane and say, I feel very betrayed. I don't understand why you would say this to Kim. And again, Kane became extremely defensive, said, well, I would do this. She's my friend. I would do this even if it, I would do this again. And then Kevin said, well, I don't understand. Why would you do this? And he said, well, you were sleeping with a girl a week before you saw her. And Kevin said, no, it was over a month. And it was before we even went on a date. And I'm a single guy. And I never told Kim that I was a celibate guy. And why are you making it like I was cheating on her? So Kevin was naturally upset and felt betrayed. And Kane refused to deal with it, refused to actually listen, and didn't even acknowledge Kevin's feelings, didn't say, I'm sorry you feel that way. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. Maybe I overreacted. There were a lot of different things he could have done, but he just got defensive. And again, Kevin walked away and felt like, boy, oh boy, this is terrible. I thought I was so close with this person, and look what he's done. So going back to the scenario with Dorothy, what could Kane have done? How could he have engaged in confrontation in a healthy, constructive way that might have actually salvaged his relationship with Dorothy? Well, when Dorothy had said, you got into this Instagram battle with my friend trying to one-up him, Kane could have said, I was immature at the time. you're right, I shouldn't have done it, and I feel really bad about it, and I was very foolish, and my ego got in the way, or whatever reason he could have said. He could have explained himself, and he could have said, I'm sorry, it was a stupid thing, and I know he was your friend, and I can see why you would be unhappy about it. He could acknowledge her, and he could be empathetic and say, I understand why you would feel bad about that. And when she raised another point, he could have said, you're right, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it. I won't do it again. I value your friendship. I see that that kind of thing upsets you, so I won't do that. I promise you, I won't do that. And then, Dorothy might have thought, oh, okay, this is somebody maybe I would like to be friends with. With Kevin, Kane could have said, I overreacted. I'm sorry. I didn't think about how it would make you feel. You're my friend too, and I can see how you would feel betrayed. I didn't mean to undermine your relationship with Kim. I just was nervous for Kim, and maybe I'm overprotective of her, and I wasn't thinking about you, but it wasn't fair of me to do that because you're my friend too, and I shouldn't have made her doubt your feelings or your trustworthiness, so I'm sorry. He could have listened, and he could have acknowledged his behavior, and maybe then Kevin could trust him again, and also maybe he wouldn't have sabotaged the relationship, which it looks like is not going anywhere as a result. And then there was another scenario as well in which Kane did something very odd. So he had heard something from his friend Christine. Christine had confessed to him while she was very upset about the anniversary of her mother's passing that someone had called her and told her some upsetting information that this woman, Anna, was out to get her. And then instead of him keeping it in confidence, he brought it up with his friend Kim and his friend Kelly. Kelly decided that he and Kim should go and ask Anna whether she said it or not. And so he and Kim went off and talked to Anna, who of course denied it. And then he went back to Christine and said, well, Anna denied it, so I don't know if you're telling me the truth. And so Christine, of course, was very upset because she was surprised that Kane had not kept what she had said in confidence. And then Christine had to go talk to Anna. And after a lot of arguments back and forth, Christine said, I never thought that Kane would, come back to you and say that. And Anna said, it's true. Kane is doing a lot of gossiping, and that's not helping any. So Anna actually conceded that Kane was not being constructive. So Kane has had a couple of problems on this show that I have observed. One is that he is extremely defensive and does not handle healthy confrontation, even when people are just very kindly and lovingly saying, I don't like what you did, or I wasn't happy with what you did. He can't listen, he can't hear it, and he cannot respond to the specific statements that people are making. And as well, it appears that he is not keeping confidences, and he is gossiping about people. So this makes Kane a very untrustworthy character. I don't know if this is his true character or if this is scripted. Again, it's very hard to know in these shows how much of it is authentic and how much of it is written down, and they're just performing it for the cameras because more drama, of course, gets more views. But if this is something that he's doing in real life, it's very problematic because it's going to create a lot of suffering. It's going to create a lot of alienation because now in the show, Christine's saying, I thought he was a friend and now I can't trust him. Even Anna is saying, his gossiping is creating a lot of problems between people. Kevin is not happy with him. Dorothy has completely written him off. His friend Jamie, who was watching the way he was responding to Dorothy, obviously can see a side of Kane that she didn't see before. Kim is seeing what Kane is capable of. So the whole group is starting to get a sense of Kane's behavior. And this can be quite problematic for him down the road. It might make people feel very untrusting toward him and that they can't actually resolve any difficulties. It appears that he's been a very generous and loving friend, which is great. But if he's gossiping and nobody can trust that he can keep their confidences to himself, and as well, if he is defensive and incapable of taking feedback and dealing with healthy confrontation, this is going to be a very problematic person to be friends with. So when we are having confrontation, it's so important that we listen to what the other person is saying, that we don't get defensive, that we just be open to hearing what they have to say, listen to see if there's any truth in what they're saying. Maybe they're making it up, maybe they're misunderstanding. And if there's a misunderstanding, we can clear it up. If they're just making it up, we can say, I don't think that happened. Or maybe they heard from somebody else, some hearsay, and you can say, what you're hearing isn't true. Or if it's something that you actually did, then you can say, I'm sorry. It's okay to say, I did it, yes, and I apologize. People are very unlikely to be angry at you if you just own up and apologize. They're much more likely to be angry at you if you deny or if you refuse to engage, like Cain refused to engage with Dorothy or with Kevin. If you just say, it's true, I did that, I'm really sorry, and you can explain maybe, I did that because I was angry, or I did that because I was immature at the time, or I don't even know why I did that, and I really hate myself for it. If you show real remorse for what you did, and if you acknowledge your behavior and you apologize, people are much more likely to trust you and like you and want to be friends with you than if you get defensive and deny and try to gaslight them and say it didn't happen, or tell them that they're overreacting, or just get super defensive and walk away like Cain did. So dealing with healthy confrontation really requires you to take some ownership for your behavior, and also to acknowledge that it wasn't right. And also that requires listening so you can understand what the other person is trying to say, and clarifying anything that might be incorrect, but taking that ownership if there's something that you're responsible for. And also, as a sidelight, don't gossip, because there's no good that comes from breaking people's confidences or talking about people behind their back. So if you want to be an intelligent person, don't gossip. It's not going to get you far in life. I'm Dr. Marcia Sirota, talking about how to deal with healthy confrontation in an effective way that will win you friends and keep you friends rather than alienating the people in your life. Please stay tuned for more content across social media. I'll be talking about mental health and topics in wellness.